Oh, absolutely. And then number four was just that the drug does little to nothing to actually affect what I'm going through. Is that a self-report on the patient's part? These are all self-reports. Yeah, this is what patients say about why they're not taking their medication. So maybe, just to be completely clear with everyone, maybe we should say the patient believes the drug does little. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is all. Yeah, patient believes all that stuff. The patient believes the drug cost is too high. Like ever so important. It really is. It's so cushy. And like that includes out west. It's really good out there right now. And little man, thinking these are good? Yeah. Did it get cold at all? No. Multiple cases of terrible situations happening when people are overprescribed. You know, when someone takes a drug for condition A, but it produces a side effect, and they have to take the drug for that side effect, and then actually they have to take another drug for that side effect. You know, this giant cocktail of drugs are taking in side effects. And although that happens in hurricanes, Ryan Mays, a 20-year-old Heman recruit, faces 2 counts for starting the fire. Navy says because he was disgruntled after dropping out of Navy SEAL training. His attorney says there's no physical evidence linking him to the fire, but another sailor says he heard Mays talking to himself, saying that he didn't. Peter King, CBS News. Registration is underway for the return of Southeast St. Patrick's Day Parade. It's coming back in just over 3 weeks on Sunday, March 20th. The pandemic sidelined the parade for 2 years. What the folks are saying, guys, hey, the guaranteed money, we want to hedge our bet a little bit. We're not sure Lamar Jackson's lawyer or whether you're an office sending invoices, a side hustle NC shop, or a warehouse shipping delivery, this stuff is going to happen. Stop overpaying for the showroom. Sign up with Home Delivery for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, free postage, and a digital. We're having personally expected to watch. Although what we have seen, especially during the pandemic, when all of the showrooms and all of our boutiques were closed, we even transacted very high-end watches completely digitally, which was very surprising to us as well. But our average sales price is not at the 200,000 US level, so it's much closer to 10,000 US. And at the lower price point, we see a lot of transactions taking place online. What we have additionally is an in-house sales team where people send an inquiry to us and then we follow up. And then most of it is actually done quite old school by phone. And the transactions taking place digitally. But if and when people prefer, then obviously that will build a retirement portfolio that will go up and I'm expecting ever money online. Let me just skip today and speak to the yeah. Wow. Madame Caïta, je me prends comme couché sur mon fauteuil et je me confesse, Madame la psychologue. J'ai écouté un journaliste. Not CRD, you understand. It's always messed me up. When I say your website, it's more hard for me to say CRD. It's not CRD. Yeah. With their skull to several, there are varying versions of this, but the most common one you can find is this elongated skull by actually binding it as it's growing. It's like an extreme version of like foot binding, and tout au court,
de la journée de vendredi tout à fait atroce. Et puis, des chaussées qui sont enneigées, partiellement enneigées, tant et si bien que tout au cours des prochaines heures, tout au cours de la nuit, jusqu'à ce matin, des travaux mobiles de soufflage et de transport de neige sur tout le réseau routier. Et ça veut dire des fermetures d'entrée, de sortie, de bretelles, des fermetures partielles ou totales de voies sur l'ensemble du réseau routier de la grande région de Montréal. Évidemment, par le fait même, les travaux, les chantiers prévus pour les prochaines heures ont à peu près tous été annulés. Il devait y avoir fermeture de voies sur le pont Madeleine-Parent, route 30 au-dessus du canal de Pont-Arnois.
But in other ways, nothing really happened. There was no decision by Aaron Rodgers, and the Packers didn't tag receiver Devontae Adams. Something has to give on both fronts. Rodgers did say it won't be long, and the Packers have until March 8th to put the franchise. So we're getting close, right? We're getting some dates here, so we can have some finality here in this offseason regarding Rodgers' future. But that's not the only quarterback that has a cloudy future with his longtime team. How about Russell Wilson in Seattle? Damian Woody takes a look in his crystal ball.
That tells me, man, that Russell Wilson will go back to Seattle because I think with Russell Wilson, if you want to think.
What?
The Rams really changed that paradigm. And if I'm the Washington Commanders or the Pittsburgh Steelers, two teams
Au Cèdre. Alors, ce sera fermé en direction est.
2003, a deserted town in Chile, located in the Atacama Desert. Until 09, and at that time was brought to a symposium in Spain, and it's going to get better. Big wood on if the coach and quarterback can win and win big in the desert.
I have total belief in Kyler Murray being a franchise quarterback. He's one of the best young to have his teams finish strong. We've seen this going back to his Texas Tech days where, the team started out strong and then couldn't finish. When you mentioned that it's a 6-inch long skeleton.
Oh my God.
It looks so Costello back in place. African weather together. And the same can be said about Optimum Internet Service at Optimum Mobile. You get super fast internet at home and fast and reliable.
You don't have to answer. No need.
Austin, it'll drop into the suburbs. Tomorrow, partly sunny, becoming windy, high 41. It could be a late day or early nighttime storm. Hey, it's Bloomberg 1130. Now, news update. This is a special report. Russia invades Ukraine. The Biden administration is going to ask Congress for an additional $6.4 billion to help Ukraine. That's what four sources familiar with the matter told NBC News. Two of them said $3.5 billion would go toward the Department of Defense and $2.9 billion would go to the State Department and U.S. Agency for International Development. New York is preparing to welcome thousands of refugees from Ukraine. Elected officials and Ukrainian groups met in New York City Friday, urging President Biden to start helping those escaping war. Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine.
The city does need to start investing now in the nonprofits that have the expertise but are already overstretched. Need to get started.
Need no Valentine.
Inhibitors for contamination and degradation of DNA.
Also entirely human fetus, but so tiny.
I get 50% off installation with
The Big Takes, Jim Stinovich.
You said a source.
Slash because it's a mostly vintage car dealership.
what was the guy behind it too?
If you're not driving or something, go check out a photo of this and tell the elected president.
After the NBC update.
On Saturday morning show, our weekend coverage of the invasion of Ukraine will include Conversation at 7:40 with the CEO of the Ukrainian-Canadian Conference.
At 8:10, Vanessa will serve up a recipe for panko-crusted salmon, and Bill Brownstein tells us all about the new Ben Stiller project.
Blood consolidated credit get back to a debt.
4991. Ontario license number 4705786. Reignite your love for driving with a 150.
And if somebody in class, they pick a target, and out of that whole stack, pick a target, and they will randomly pick a target, and it will have been the one I picked.
I know, I've seen that. That's unreal. And it's true, you guys. It's true. I've seen it myself. It's amazing because your subconscious knows what you're going to think. It already knows what you're going to think.
Well, it knows what somebody else is going to pick. Yeah.
Well, all of that. Yeah, exactly. Well, interesting because let's go back to, my whole thing is looking at the similarities of all these things. The same thing happens when you're out there with the Bigfoot. I kid you not, they're all about, it reminds me of you. You're going to have to go out one of these creek hot spots with me sometime because they
are big and clumsy and
I'm not like you would always teach, hey, time is not linear, it's backwards, forward.
Spécialisé dans les techniques de Germain said it was a premature female. Les amis. Free Odyssey app. Just pull up WFAN. Right? Getting cigarettes from my main man, Dave Shepard. He's coming up next. The Gerald Spooky show is over. Don't move. I told you to listen to Dave Shepard. I need postcards. देवानंद साहब ने इस गाने को रिजेक्ट कर दिया. उनको ये गाना बिल्कुल भी पसंद does it, Montblanc does it. Yeah, I think you're going to see people, brands have to decide whether they're going to be just luxury, mechanical, or they're going to really try to fight for this space. So, Apple Watch versus this one intact. A couple of different members of the Swiss and they switched up to get up. Yeah. 690.
You're kidding me. You don't know those boys are dirty cops. You don't know if there are connections with
trade to TM1 and I'll connect you with a new car just waiting to be loved. On Rob's BBQ CA.
A lakeside home is everything that you think. Prestige Waterfront project is ready for viewing. Royal K Homes along Lac Saint Louis and Dorval are unlike any other properties available in Montreal. Nestled in McConnell Woods with waterfront access with your own private docks. Timeless, modern dream homes on the most exquisite properties. Book a visit today at prestige.ca.
Hi, I'm Max Petretti. Come see for yourselves why I chose Prestige to build my home. Visit prestige.ca for more details.
CTV's The Good Doctor returns Monday. Change is pushing the team to the edge.
I can't trust you.
Get into an all-new episode of The Good Doctor. Returns Monday at 10, only on CTV. Then stream anytime.
CKGM AM is TSN 690. Live streaming and on demand on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto through the iHeartRadio Canada app.
Is there optimism from the baseball bunches? DeMar DeRozan, an MVP favorite. Welcome to Sports Center all night on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. Questions ahead with the
Better odds and favorable prices.
Between now and 6 a.m. when Richard Beer comes your way. I'm assuming it's your train station. Richard is stable. 6 a.m. I don't even want to look at it. I'm just so mad I don't look at anything. Because I got to tell you, I don't know if you heard me on the pre-show. Yes, I'm fixated on Miss Lockhart. Yeah, I'm pissed off about it. Yes, I love baseball. Yes, I can't wait. I heard Chris talking to all you guys. And please give me a call, 877-337-6666. I'll take your call. I see Mike up there now on the Rangers. Hey, Mike. I think you're calling the lockout. We'll get into a bunch of things over the next 4 hours or so. But I got to tell you, if you heard me on the lockout show, the pre-show, the lockout is occupying my brain. You heard me on the pre-show, he was somewhat positive when he was to you 8 hours ago, whenever it was, at 6:30. We were positive that the meeting lasted 6 hours. This is where we are. We're looking at how
43 to 102 over those Bulls going charismatic, good looking and energetic and young and crazy and, going back and forth with Aaron Donald at the Super Bowl parade. We'll get that. He's cool. He's hip. He's relatable.
We don't understand, for most of us, that we are witnessing an individual that when it's all said and done, may go down as the greatest NFL head coach to ever live. The Rams.
Never Straight Talk. Brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. I think
continue now. We have to talk about just heard Lydia Serrano, the Albanian banker. I'm talking about some former CIA director, CIA, right? Criminals in action. People trust the CIA. Imagine it was Daniel Patrick Moynihan who said, you can't trust the CIA. They're criminals in action. He said, you don't know what their budget is. You don't know who's getting paid. We're supposed to be paying foreign agents of America, and yet CIA agents walk out with suitcases full of money. They're not accountable. You don't know who they're loyal to. He said the CIA should have been abolished. I agree with him. The most corrupt organization of so many corrupt departments that make up our American government. No doubt about it. But I will say this about our intelligence community. They've been wrong so long. Wrong on Iraq, weapons of mass destruction. Wrong about Gaddafi in Libya. It led to Hillary Rodham Clinton and our Secretary of State convincing Barack Obama, our president, to torch Gaddafi and tear up Libya. We were wrong about that. We were wrong about Afghanistan. Right? The intelligence community said it'll be months and months and months before the Taliban even approached the outlying areas of
Just looking at them, they are one of the strangest looking creatures on Earth. They are these real disconnect to PBS picture apology that Toastmasters on use rather
they're not alone. If you look at the talking TV networks, they're stuck. Everybody was like, oh, we didn't expect. Why did we have Putin to invade Ukraine? We thought it was rational. We thought that it was like checks and balances in his thought process. Now he's a madman. Now he said, but why do we always call somebody we don't like him? How many times can you go to the Hitler well? For instance, we called Saddam Hussein Hitler. Remember, we called Saddam Hussein Hitler. Really? We called Bashir Assad, the son of the butcher of Damascus, Hafez Assad. We called him Hitler. We called Putin Hitler previously in 2014 when he took over the Crimea. That was the statement of Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton at the time that enraged Putin. And now we have Pelosi calling Putin Hitler again. None of these guys were Hitler. As bad as they are, we know Saddam Hussein. He was a bad guy. He was no Hitler. Bashir Assad, still in power in Syria because of Vladimir Putin. He's a really bad guy. He's no Hitler. And Vladimir Putin, a really bad guy, but he is no Hitler. Why do we keep throwing that term out? Oh, he's
Yeah.
1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-WABC. Oh, we got somebody upset here. Oh, Robert is upset in Manhattan because he was holding on for an hour. Robert, should I bump you to the front of the queue? What should I have done to make it easier for you? Give you an easy pass, Robert? What do you want me to do? What's your thing? I met you some time ago. I want to know if you remember it. Oh, like I'm supposed to, like I'm a swamp, right? I bet you remember it. Yeah, go ahead. We're waiting for me. And if you need context, I was sitting next to you and I was using a knife and fork. What place did I pinch? First. That's right. And I won it 4 times. You see, but I don't remember you, Robert. I was sitting right next to you. Oh, and I'm supposed to remember that. That's trivia. Oh, that's trivia, Robert. All right, you know something? Maybe it's dementia kicking in because I don't remember you, Robert. Okay, second thing. I'm retired from the MTA, and I was working at 96th Street, and you used to work there. And I was in the Fish Home Station agent, and Lucky Brown, the Dragon, the Nonsense, the music that is beneath the planet of the apes. Oh, yeah, we're working with giant bombs. Yeah.
Oh my God, really?
Powerful signal that there is a unified voice speaking on behalf of 3 women pushing back against the direction that the marriage and Catholic conservative court may be heading in. I think it is also important to have the perspective of a black woman giving the issues that the Supreme Court is deciding. You know, the Supreme Court currently has on its docket a case in which the states are asking the courts to overrule Roe versus Wade, a decision recognizing that women have a constitutional right to decide the end of pregnancy. And black women face astonishingly high maternal mortality rates. And it is important, it will be a good thing that when the court in the future hears issues of reproductive rights, there will be someone on the court with the perspective of a black woman. It will be very important for the court
This,
next year, a case involving
Vladimir,
there will be someone on the court who has significant experience.
boy, I mean, yeah, we are comedians, and we know the general brand of cowardice that runs through our business. Yeah, and the, you know, that fake braggadocio that comes from standing on stage and having a heckler and destroying with a microphone. What this dude is doing, it is incredibly moving. I mean, it's we're watching Shecky Green transform into Churchill. Like his grace, and I don't know if you listened to any of the speeches that he's given?
Yeah, I watched the 9-minute long one. It was, I mean, it's powerful. Yeah.
But just the grace and the Klitschko brothers that are over there. I mean, boy, what a terrible time to kind
Is
of
he actually up?
notice the real spine of this
What?
country. I would wish it was not in such terrible circumstances. Do you guys feel any of that as a comedian? Are you shocked? Is it, does that resonate with you guys at all?
I can say I mean, yeah, what's funny, I guess, is that for the past 4 or 5 years, comedian gets kind of worn with a bit of a mark of shame in a lot of ways,
Wait, past 4 or 5 years? Wait, what? Try 40 or 50. I think it's the lowest form of show business.
But I feel like I grew up as a kid, idolizing comics and comedy, and maybe you just have a different perspective.
You were a
as
child.
get older.
You were a child.
Could that be it?
You were 6, so it seemed very impressive.
Yeah, I guess worshiping David's hell, maybe in retrospect.
There you go.
Some holes. But no, so watching this guy, stand up, and communicate on such a human level to say, attack this region, the region where my best friend's mother lived, where I cheered alongside you at the European Cup. Really just dropping the political bullshit and connecting on this. I'm a human being, you're a human being level. Right. It was so touching.
I mean, in many respects, like they are brethren.
Yeah.
It is, New Jersey attacking Staten Island. Like, it's just the weirdest. There's so much shared history, and we've never seen something like this in our modern era of, listen, no one's going to excuse large countries and some of the imperialistic ventures that go on and some of the false justifications that we make for it. But generally, there will be a period of an attempt to paper over bald nationalism or crass economic interests with some high-minded rhetoric about something. Putin was just like, yes, we're going to go in and kidnap it. You're just like, wait, what? I mean, it's such a bizarre throwback.
It's full Bondville, just like old school. I can't. There's all these articles. Why is Putin doing it? There is not a single logical reason to justify this.
You know what I keep thinking of? I sort of keep thinking of the comics table at the cellar. And the idea that somebody from that little round table has been forced into this incredible feat of courage and statesmanship. And I sort of imagine, when you're sitting around the comics table and everybody's telling their horror stories, like I once opened at a Fuddruckers and there wasn't even people were just coming in and using the fucking Fixins bar, and like Zelensky's at the table, and you're all telling your horror stories of gigs and things, and he's just like, I was attacked by the Third Largest Army in the entire, and then everybody's just gonna be like, oh, why didn't I bring that up?
Yeah. The booker at the Chuckle Hut shorted me $30, so
I once did a Roger Paul gig in Rochester. They didn't feed me for 3 days, and he's like, they had the missiles pointed. I mean, it's just the courage and the humanity that I think I'm also shocked at the humanity that they're displaying.
Yeah.
That they're not responding in hatred and in anger. They're responding in care, in like, look, I don't know if you saw, there was a video, it was heartbreaking, of a man saying goodbye.
Yes.
He's sending his daughter away. He's going to stay. And it's,
What?
boy, there's a part of me that truly hopes that this is where the social media algorithm will shine. There's a part of me that hopes that if anything can go viral, let it be this. Let it be these speeches. Let it be these moments. And let that in some way build momentum to end this. And that would be.
I am praying for that, but it's so dystopian that we are like, please, algorithm, favor the right side.
Let me tell you something, man. Artificial intelligence fucking owes us.
Yeah.
It's driven me down so many rabbit holes that it's got to give me something. It's got to provide some measure of redemption for itself. That if it can, take this moment, but boy, and I just feel.
For what?
You're watching a guy drive a country over a cliff in real time, and I don't think this ends well for anybody. But I also don't think it ends well for Putin and the Russian people. I feel like he is driving the Russian people.
Yeah, what?
He's going to hurt them economically, psychically, in so many different ways. And for fucking what? This guy
for nothing, and they're going to get hurt bad in this. They'll be a pariah country without in the inability to access dollars and trade with the West. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt.
Even emotionally, it looks like the kind of psychic wound that a country is going to be hard. And then I understand he's feeding them the whole nonsense of we're demilitarizing and denazifying. What was it? Denazification.
Yeah.
First of all, the guy who runs it's Jewish.
Yeah.
And Zelensky's he's a Jewish guy. I don't. You going to denazify him? Is that what it's called now? I'm pretty sure it's the inverse of that.
Yeah.
But fuck, man.
But fuck?
You know, not to sugarcoat it and not to suggest that we have any deeper, nuanced understanding of the relationship between those two countries, because as Americans, I can assure you, we do not. we only learn geography when somebody is bombing somebody. I mean, that's the level of attention that we pay on the world stage.
And that somebody is usually us.
And that somebody is usually us. And then all of a sudden, everybody's an expert on where Kabul is.
Yes.
Yeah. Nobody else knows. What do you think? Does a guy like Trump now go like? How do they turn that? Do they turn that with the? I guess the turn is just like this never would have happened with me because he knows I'm strong. You're like, well, maybe he never would have happened with you because he knows that he wasn't up against anything when you were there, so he didn't need to do anything. I don't fucking know.
I think Trump's already said something like, "I alone can fix this Russian problem," which is
that really true?
Yeah. Well, and that's the talking point, right? 2014, Crimea. Obama, Crimea.
Sure.
Now Biden. And
So
then
of course that's the talking point.
Yeah.
What is the talking point on? Yeah, we had $400 million worth of armaments that we denied them because you wouldn't do an investigation into,
Yes.
Hunter Biden or some shit. Listen, man, watching these guys backpedal, but it is. I had tweeted. So I don't know if you guys decided to do it.
I've seen it. I'm aware.
Yeah.
Here was my latest tweet I just put out there because I was watching all this go down. I was watching, the general Tucker Carlson, Father Coughlin hour, and he was on this whole thing like, I've been conditioned to hate Putin, but does Putin
Right.
make me use pronouns that I don't want to, this kind of shit. And so I realized that they're not, their support for Putin is not, there's no compromise. Everybody knows, like, what do they have on those guys? They have compromise. They're not. They are ideological brethren. They don't particularly care. They are authoritarian in personality.
Yes.
They agree with him, and they believe that the left in this country, liberals, progressives, Democrats, are actually the evil empire. And I said this, to be fair, in a peak of anger. I was in a fit of pique, as they say, and I said it as I was watching Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson down. She called Zelensky, said, he was calling on Russia not to attack. She called it pathetic. I mean, it was one of the most disturbing and disgusting couple of hours of television. Don't ask me why I do this.
I was just about to. I was just going to say, psychologically, why have you picked a career where you've decided to just enrage yourself?
Sometimes I'll just, if I don't feel like watching, I'll just take my balls and just to a frying pan that's been heated to give me the same sense. But so it's in a fit of pique, and maybe it's not the fairest, that they would call people. Well, Dinesh D'Souza tweeted out something today, which was exactly that. What he basically came out and said was, yeah, I'm with Putin. Fuck the liberals. Fuck the Democrats. I want them destroyed. It is finally someone said it.
Yes.
Holy shit. Mm-hmm. That's where we are. They'd rather make a deal with Putin than Pelosi by any day, any stretch of the imagination. They believe the left to be evil.
Yes. Yeah. And culture war has trumped everything. Culture war is the number one battle cry of these people, despite the fact that it's mostly inconsequential in reality. But it just makes them mad, and that's enough.
Yeah. Listen, those guys all have, we used to call it Ballsheimer's. Ballsheimer's was these guys that say fucking horrendous things and then have the balls to pretend like they don't remember ever saying it. They'll just go on. Tomorrow it'll be in that world. I have always I've always fought Putin. Putin has always been a tyrant. I've never said any different. Of course, we stand with democratic nations around the world. Freedom for one means freedom for all. And man, you go back in the archives. This is what we used to do at the Daily Show. You go back in the archives and go, this, and this. You play it and you think like the shame would somehow be like the groundhog would see a shadow that's fucking disappear. Because no, shame is not an emotion that exists.
Yeah, and that's so crushing to it. That's why the fact that you lasted 16 years at the Daily. At a certain point, I would be like, "Welcome." Last night, Mitch McConnell said this. 6 years ago, he said the opposite. Here it is. Here's Doris Clarence Goodwin to tell me
Well,
that.
it does, because at a certain point, you what's wearing on you is impotent rage.
Right.
Yeah. Because if you're not playing, right? Because a lot of them are playing. A lot of them are creating an urgency and a rage and an upset that they don't actually feel. It's performative. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But if you're feeling it every night, and as best we could, we tried to make a show that was really feeling it, visceral, not performative. The lack of movement towards the world that you would prefer to live in sort of begins to wear you down to the point where I don't know if people can see this as a visually if they're watching this, but this looks like a time lapse of Robbie is where we started. Rob is where I was in the middle of it, and here I am now.
Gives me some hope. Maybe I'll grow some hair back, you know?
Robbie, have you ever been able to grow a beard of that strength and character?
I can actually grow pretty big, but like you, it looks more rabbinical than anything else. You know?
I go from 0 to rabbinical
Yes.
in 11 days. What he's got going there is like there's a certain menace to it.
Yes. This man is chopping wood in front of his in
Right?
front of his cabin, and we're trying to get him back to not after what you guys did to me in Tajikistan kind of beard.
Well, anyway, this is an amazing month for us. We got 4, I think, really wonderful episodes. We start with Wall Street, we go to climate change, and then we go to, I believe, the media, of which we are very complimentary. By the way, let me say this about the media. We have a whole episode on how bad they fucking blow. These types of stories, Ukraine, the war, this is what they're actually built for. And when they are matched with their purpose and there is a story equal to it, boy, do they deliver. And they have done a magnificent job of bringing this story, the reality of this story, to the public. I have been wildly impressed, and it just shows you what they are capable of when a story is at the level of urgency that they pretend everything else is. And boy, it's a little heartbreaking, because you see just like how talented and how committed and how involved they can be, but when left idle or when left to the kind of the currents of their
10 years I've been seeing
ratings
these fucking smiley faces.
overlords, how their natural and innate abilities are perverted into something way more damaging. But fuck, man. I don't know if you're watching the coverage, but they have been on, I believe the phrase is motherfucking point.
Yeah, you said everything perfectly, so I'm not even going to piggyback on that.
Yeah, but let me just say, except for Fox. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. We have an exciting.
No more. UCP. Decisions. City News, Local News, The National,
I'd be interested by these.
City News. Local News, Sun. Oh.
Sagar, let's take a look at how the Republicans have been truly divided about how they want to deal with all of this.
Yeah, this has been a fascinating kind of thing to watch. I'm curious to see how the Ukraine actual invasion will change things. But Trump, I can't help but Trump himself. So here's the statement that he put out. Go ahead and put this up there on the screen. Quote, Putin is playing Biden like a drum. It's not a pretty thing to watch. There's kind of been a really gross cheering on, Crystal, by a lot of segments of the American right that I've observed, in which they kind of relish seeing the world order crumble in order to own the libs and be like, see, this didn't happen under Trump. Well, look, that's empirically true. But also, I would say that in a time like this, you can criticize the president, fine, which I do plenty. But I think like actively cheering on
Putin is
cheering on
level.
Putin. And again, I hate how much this sounds like Russiagate stuff. Like you can parse it between like, okay, what Trump says about Putin or what, pursuing better relations with Russia, that's not treason or whatever. Also praising Putin in this, it's also not treason. I mean, it's kind of gross in terms of what he's doing. And that's where I would put the current domestic political situation. In terms of what he said specifically, it's frankly the most Trump response of all time. This was an interview he gave to Buck Sexton just a couple of days ago. Let's put it up there on the screen, which is, he says, quote, Putin is now saying it's independent, a large section of Ukraine. I said, quote, how smart is that? He's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. We could use that on the border. He's a guy who's very savvy. I think the funniest thing, Crystal, let's go ahead and put this next tear sheet up there on the screen, which kind of describes the big Republican dynamic. It's that Trump apparently said that Ukraine is great, quote, from a real estate standpoint. Oh my God. So he's always be closing. He's always thinking in that mindset.
It really is disgraceful to, and he continued. I mean, it really is disgraceful to. It's not treason. It's not impeachable or whatever. But it is disgraceful to be basically like praising and cheering on a guy who is just aggressively like initiating a war that is going to have massive consequences, especially for the Ukrainian people, result in death and destruction, but also for our own people.
Part of the reason America First not that resonated with me was because the seminal moment of my life was the belligerent U.S. invasion of Iraq. It was terrible. This is the same thing. We should be condemning it and feeling exactly the same way in our hatred of what is happening. That doesn't mean that you have to green light war. And I don't like Joe Biden either. Criticize him plenty here on the show. But to see all of it devolve into the culture war is actually deeply, deeply sad. That being said, on the actual specifics, there is a huge debate about what's happening on Capitol Hill. Throw that Politico tear sheet back up there on the screen, please. Because what they go into is that Republicans are descending into foreign policy factionalism over Russia and Ukraine. So Senator Josh Hawley had actually come out and basically taken a similar position to what we had said, Crystal, saying, look, I don't think that Ukraine should be a part of NATO, recognizing the role of NATO expansion. He, obviously departs from you. He said that he's like, look, I think this distracts from our number one geopolitical threat, which is China. I frankly agree with that. But what it is that the difference is that the other side of the GOP, and frankly, the more, at least representative side from a pure what they believe in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, Tom Cotton, all of that, is kind of maximally neocon. I mean, we saw Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, of course, unhinged, unrestricted neocon, and probably still apologizes for the war in Iraq, floating some sort of U.S. must be involved, all of this. Mitch McConnell, similarly, remember that we saw that he praised Biden for sending troops abroad. I wouldn't be surprised if he said that we should greenlight some sort of, Cold War or whatever in terms of Ukraine insurgency. So that is the big split. Obviously, Tucker Carlson on the side of Josh Hawley with the Republican base. It's hard to find a way that this all works because what people misunderstand. I just almost pulled a George.
Misunderestimate.
Yeah. What people don't seem to understand is that the Republican base does not have any theory of geopolitics. They love the culture war, and that's pretty much it. And so when I see people be like, the base wants to stay out, the base wants to stay in, The base is with whatever Trump says. So I think it very much is the default to look at Biden, he's a fool, all of that. I mean, if you were to come down to like U.S. invasion, everybody's probably against it. But people who are trying to say like this is what the base wants or not, I don't think people have any deep theories.
And I could see the base getting, you know, if the conditions were correct, I could see the
Thank
base
you.
being persuaded that we should be boots on the ground. We should be all
Trump
in.
was like, we should fight this
Exactly.
week, and we should send troops. They would all be.
I mean, these are some
Saw
of the
this in
same
Afghanistan.
these are some of
Yeah.
the same people who cheered on war in Iraq for
Exactly.
a very long time. So I mean, you know, our public has
People are fickle.
People are fickle. People are very nationalistic, and you know they don't like to see us sort of like humiliated on the world stage, which this has to be seen as a global humiliation. And so, you know, it is going to be very interesting to see how Trump responds, how the Republican Party responds. I think what I've seen so far, even among like the same individual, is something that is really incoherent.
What?
That's both sort of like, you know, anti-intervention, but
Really,
also
really.
Biden's not being strong enough. But also, you know, and I think the one consistent thread that you will hear from all of these people is it didn't happen under Trump. Without laying out like what he did that was different, that was better, or what Biden did that was wrong, just it didn't happen under Trump, so we got to go back to Trump. I think that'll be the most consistent.
That's gonna be the answer.
That you hear, which isn't, you know, particularly thoughtful or nuanced, but that'll be the common thread.
I've been trying to think about why.
That holds them all
Why
together.
not under Trump? You know, I mean, here's the thing too. Trump departed from the Obama administration policy of
Matter.
arming Ukrainians. People forget that. He's the one who sent them lethal aid. This was a huge debate in Washington in 2015.
I mean, he got impeached over his,
Yes, right.
over the fact
And
that
then by not sending. So it's like,
not
okay.
sending, and then
Yeah.
you know, and he had a different position on Nord Stream.
Right.
I actually think it maybe is less about those individual decisions. And Trump was very hostile to NATO, and you know, I mean, I personally think that
Robbie, to you in the bathroom.
I have lots of issues with Trump. I think that one thing is the correct posture because
No, I agree.
why do we still have NATO? I mean, again, I think what we saw from the big Putin speech is that this was about a lot more than NATO, and even, you know, sort of saying putting Ukraine completely off the table and having a different posture towards NATO probably wouldn't have been enough to stop this from happening. But in terms of the orientation of Trump and how that may have changed Putin's thinking or put him off till now, probably the animus towards NATO was maybe the biggest factor. That's just my guess.
I mean, look, I think NATO has a role. I don't think the expanded NATO was a good idea. That being said, that's what it is now, and there's no changing that.
Well, you know,
And so,
I really thought it was interesting in Putin's speech when, who knows if this is true or not, but when he's talked about, I said to President Clinton, okay, well,
in 1990.
yeah, how about we're a member of NATO?
Right.
Basically just proving, like, you say this isn't about us anymore, but this feels like it's still about us.
No one can prove that. I read Clinton's biography. He never mentioned that. It's possible. Look, who knows whether he's lying.
And here's the other thing that we always have to keep in mind is, you know, for us, we're looking at this, we're like, we don't even want Ukraine and NATO really.
Yeah.
So, like, what are you so freaked out about? But in the same way that we perceive our adversaries' every move as aggressive and intentional, they, of course, view it the same way from our perspective.
Oh, look, and they have a long history going back over 1,000 years of being suspicious of the West, of being paranoid of any sort of
and rightfully
accusations. Yeah, not necessarily wrong.
Yeah.
I think you're probably right. I think that the Trump posture towards NATO and being, you know, very critical, rightfully, in my opinion, I long support this, admonishing the Europeans for not fulfilling their defense obligations, frankly, was the correct posture. And I think it's also funny, in a way, this is a major vindication of that posture. You people, at the end of the day, primary deterrence was up to you. If there's a war on the European continent, you're the people on the front line. And yet you spend 1.5% of your GDP. You have way more of a threat against Russia than America ever will. And the Germans will always say, oh, you don't understand. You know, it's a different situation now. I mean, look, who looks like an idiot now? And it's your country. You guys decide. You're only 1,000 miles away from Kiev or whatever. And I think that this is an indication of that policy. But also you're correct, which is that his posture towards NATO very likely made it so he didn't seem to be a real possibility. At the same time, I just don't know with Putin. I mean, it was never in the cards to let Ukraine into NATO, at least in the last year or so.
Yeah,
Nothing changed on that front.
That's true. It could also be, you know, we are in a very weak position right now, coming out of the pandemic. You know, the nation is completely divided. We had an extraordinarily high death rate from COVID compared to the rest of the world. We can't agree on like the basics of society. You've got 80% of the public that says we're on the wrong track. Biden doesn't exactly, score great marks when it comes to projecting strength, competence, capability, all of those things. And so it could just be, partly kind of timing coming out of the pandemic and seeing this very weakened America and deciding, part of which is Biden's fault, part of which is Trump's fault, and deciding that, now's the time to strike. I don't think, listen, we'll never know, but we do know that the Republican line will be, it didn't happen under Trump, and they won't have to provide any specifics as to why.
Given what we're about to talk about, that's going to be a very compelling case in 2024.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut. Our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions. All that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you, mainstream media.
On top of neo-Nazis up to the president is at the podium now. Has begun a brutal assault on the people of Ukraine. Without provocation, without justification, without necessity, this is a premeditated attack. Vladimir Putin has been planning this for months, as we've been saying all along. He moved more than 175,000 troops, military equipment, and positions along the Ukrainian border. He moved blood supplies into position. He built a field hospital, which tells you all you need to know about his intentions all along. He rejected every good faith effort the United States and our allies and partners made to address our nation's security concerns through dialogue, to avoid needless conflict and avert human suffering. For weeks, we have been warning that this would happen.
Yes,
now,
exactly.
It's unfolding largely as we predicted. In the past week, we've seen shelling increase in the Donbass, the region in eastern Ukraine controlled by Russian-backed separatists. Russian government has perpetrated cyber attacks against Ukraine. We saw a staged political theater in Moscow, outlandish and baseless claims that Ukraine was about to invade and launch a war against Russia. The Ukraine was prepared to use chemical weapons. Ukraine committed a genocide without any evidence. We saw a flagrant violation of international law in attempting to unilaterally create two new so-called republics on sovereign Ukrainian territory. And at the very moment that the United Nations Security Council was meeting to stand up for Ukraine's sovereignty, to stave off invasion, Putin declared his war. Within moments, missile strikes began to fall on historic cities across Ukraine. Then came the air raids, followed by tanks and troops rolling in. We've been transparent with the world. We've shared declassified evidence about Russia's plans and cyber attacks and false pretexts so that there could be no confusion or cover-up about what Putin is doing. Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences. Today, I'm authorizing additional strong sanctions and new limitations on what can be exported to Russia. This is going to impose severe cost on the Russian economy, both immediately and over time. We have purposely designed these sanctions to maximize the long-term impact on Russia and to minimize the impact on the United States and our allies. I want to be clear, the United States is not doing this alone. For months, we've been building a coalition of partners representing well more than half the global economy. 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and many others, to amplify the joint impact of our response. I just spoke with the G7 leaders this morning, and we're in full and total agreement. We will limit Russia's ability to do business in dollars, euros, pounds, and yen to be part of the global economy. We'll limit their ability to do that. We're going to stop the ability to finance and grow the Russian military. We're going to impose major, and we're going to impair their ability to compete in high-tech 21st century economy. We've already seen the impact of our actions on Russia's currency and the ruble, which early today hit its weakest level ever in history. The Russian stock market plunged today. The Russian government borrowing rate spiked by over 15%. In today's actions, we've now sanctioned Russian banks that together hold around $1 trillion in assets. We've cut off Russia's largest bank, a bank that holds more than 1/3 of Russia's banking assets by itself, cut it off from the U.S. financial system. And today, we're also blocking 4 more major banks. That means every asset they have in America will be frozen. This includes VTB, the second largest bank in Russia, which has $250 billion in assets. As promised, we're also adding the names to the list of Russian elites and their family members that were sanctioned as well. As I said on Tuesday, these are people who personally gain from the Kremlin's policies, and they should share in the pain. We will keep up this drumbeat of those designations against corrupt billionaires in the days ahead. On Tuesday, we stopped the Russian government from raising money from U.S. or European investors. Now we're going to apply the same restrictions to Russia's largest state-owned enterprises, companies with assets that exceed $1.4 trillion. Some of the most powerful impacts our actions will come.
Wow, you're fucking garbage.
Most of the green zone villages, the settlement of Alexandrovka was, under the terms of the Minsk Accords, supposed to have been quiet, separated from each of the warring sides by several kilometers. Instead, the wall literally came to the settlement streets, along with Ukrainian soldiers who, in contravention of those same agreements, continued their offensive.
Они сейчас стали с южной стороны, уперлись в фирму и отделили только видный год. И озеро, примерно 250 метров. Поэтому они уже обстреливают, у нас обстрелы были с западной стороны, с маленькой. То есть здесь еще с южной стороны. Там у нас поля, там была посадка. Потом зашли в ту посадку и оставалось пулеметом и проводили сюда. То есть видно, не вижу на бар, но я сам их видел.
Truckers were parked in the downtown core of Ottawa for 3 straight weeks in the act of an extremely peaceful protest. The beginning of the end to the truckers' convoy was on February 14 when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act, which is essentially a war measure. Ultimately, this led to Justin Trudeau and the federal government to enforce heavy-handed law enforcement to dismantle the demonstration and bring it to a complete end. That is Canada now. If you disagree with a certain view of politics, you face threat of arrest.
You're a fucking idiot.
And your bank account frozen.
Yes,
The
what kind of food,
situation
Jack?
is still people prepositioning people being out there indicating that they are ready to blockade, to continue their illegal occupations, to disrupt Canadians' lives. We feel that this measure needs to remain in place. So, except for the news, I'm currently about an hour drive away from Ottawa, where CTV have been reporting here yesterday, saying that the truck driver and all the protesters have been staying here, maybe planning to go back to Ottawa or blocking maybe the bridge. They have been flying drone all over the place, showing all the trucks and the protesters that were here waiting, because most of them have been seized their vehicle and a lot of their furniture, and they are waiting for it. Check my interaction with some of them, asking some questions why they are remaining around and here. Let's check it out. Can you explain to me, for most of the people that are here on scene, why they are here?
Well, they got pushed out of Ottawa, obviously, and now a lot of them are stuck here with the new laws that were just passed by our federal government. Their accounts have been frozen for some of them and most of them, so they don't even have enough money to put the fuel to go back home. You know, some of them are from BC and all over the country, and now the government, while freezing their accounts, keeps them from putting the fuel in their vehicles to get back home. So it's ridiculous.
Yep.
And it's a problem. If they want us to leave, we can, because we can't put fuel in our vehicles and leave. And I'm not talking about myself because I live around here, but these people can't do it because of those reasons. So it's a very particular way to do this. I don't understand it.
And right now, some of the media and the government are saying that these kind of people that are outside of Ottawa, gathered together, are planning to go back and block some bridge and go back to Ottawa to do some unlawful activity. Do that is true, or it's completely the opposite?
Well, what I gathered from the people I've talked to here, and I haven't talked to everybody, but I did talk to a lot of people, is that the only thing they're doing here is resting after 23 days, 24 days of freezing downtown. And when they saw what was going on with the police, destroying their vehicles, breaking their windshields, they left of their own free will. I don't think these people plan on doing anything else and trying to just go back home and rest of it. They're stuck here because most of them, their accounts are frozen, and they just don't have enough fuel to get where they're supposed to be. So they don't know what to do. Let's keep in mind, these are hard-working Canadians. None of them did anything. They're not criminals. They're certainly not terrorists. They went down there to be heard, and the government threw a curveball and said it was an illegal blockade. But none of these people ever heard about an illegal blockade. Nobody ever set down rules and regulations about what is a protest and what is not a protest. And at some point, they're like, you're occupying the city. It wasn't even in the first weeks they talked about that. It's further down the line. And it says, this is illegal. Well, we didn't know. But we're here, and we're Canadians, and this is Canadian ground, and none of us are doing anything legal, so why should that stick? Now, they use that to pass those laws and give themselves tremendous power over everybody. And now the repercussions of that is that these people are stuck here without access to their funds, can't afford, can't feed themselves, can't walk in that store and buy anything to eat because they don't have any money. And we're not even allowed to help them because if we do that, if I hand out money to somebody, I'm going against the law. So I can't understand how we got this here, and I can't even believe that the members of parliament, those that voted for this, didn't think about this and didn't take that into consideration.
And do you feel personally that now the police are chasing all these gathering points, saying almost that these people are criminal and they are chasing them?
No, that's just outrageous. It's a witch chase. It's like something you would have read in a book back in the days, when they did actually chase down witches, and anybody that didn't think their way got burnt alive. Now, they're not burning anybody here, but they're crippling them by seizing their accounts and then turning the general public against these hardworking Canadians, making them into the monsters that they are not. And that is just to justify the overreach that they've got with this new law. Now, what's the end game? There has got to be an end game here, because there's no way that the government took all these measures and put all that effort into this for a bunch of truckers. There's something else behind it. It's got to be something else, because this is just overkill. Way too much overkill. If they give these people their accounts, they're going to go back home.
And the vehicle.
Yeah. Some of them don't even have the vehicles. How are they supposed to leave them? And then you've got the mayor of Ottawa saying he's going to sell their vehicles to pay the expenses. What's that all about? If he would have just taken the time to talk to these people, it all boils down to that. There was no communication between any of the government, like a different government, to talk to truckers. All they were asking is to have somebody listen to them, and they never did that. So it's a failure from day one, on their behalf.
So what we can see on the image that was taken by the drone shot yesterday, this place was pretty more full than today. Most of them, by the threat to be arrested or to be chasing down, left the place. And right now we can just see a couple of last truck and vehicle on scene.
Moi, je suis juste de passage parce que mon pick-up a été saisi au 302 Coventry dimanche après-midi. Ils ont saisi mon pick-up, mon portefeuille, des choses, puis là, je suis comme pris à attendre à savoir qu'est-ce qui va se passer avec ça parce que là, on ne sait pas pour l'instant.
Suite à la saisie de vos items personnels et votre véhicule, est-ce qu'on vous a dit où avait été aux choses? Combien de temps il faut que vous attendiez? Avez-vous des informations?
Non, la seule information qu'on avait eue au départ, c'est les policiers sur place qui nous ont dit qu'il y avait un sergent Human qui s'occupait de l'opération. Puis on n'a jamais pu rencontrer cette personne-là, puis on n'a eu aucun détail, rien. Je sais aucunement mes affaires sont où, puis qu'est-ce qui va se passer avec tout ça. Là. Fait que je suis en attente. Puis de porter une feuille d'identité. C'est ça, c'est plate un peu. Parce que là, je sais pas quoi faire. Je suis ici pour ça présentement, pas pour.
Wow. We have been to multiple places where we heard that some of the rest of the Freedom Convoy was. Some of the site have been completely cleared out, but this one is a private property where the people are here for resting. And so, as you see, the media mainstream came here to try to know a little bit more about this place. Can you explain a little bit what you are doing first here?
So basically what we're doing, I just want to make this perfectly clear, we're a peace movement, we're all about love, we got love for our countries, that's the reason we're here. And we're basically regrouping. We got attacked by our government, our fellow Canadian police attacked us. There's a lot of trauma that's been had here, and we're just regrouping, trying to get people's assets back into their hands. Cars, have been impounded, and we're just setting up camp here, and we're regrouping what we're doing.
Can you explain a little bit how the people now feel after what happened with the police at Parliament Hill?
Well, we're all absolutely shocked. We didn't expect our government to come in and beat us with sticks. I got pepper sprayed twice.
Holy shit.
I've seen guys getting beat down, everything from tear gas or rubber bullets. In my opinion, it's a national disgrace what happened in Ottawa.
So what is your plan for the couple of next week that's to come?
Well, we're not quitting. We're not quitting at all costs. This movement has lit a fire across the world, across the nations. We're here to unite Canada. We're tired of fighting with our families. We're tired of losing our jobs. We're tired of watching our friends and family die to mental health, suicide, and addiction. So we're standing strong. We will not be intimidated by the Trudeau regime.
And what is your thought about the fact that they use the fact that some place like here have some trucks still remain on scene next to Ottawa, and they use that to say we need the Emergencies Act to protect from unlawful activities?
They're scared. The government's scared
Oh, yeah.
because we're exposing all the corruption. They have ties to the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, full communist control over Canada, the social credit score system. We're exposing that. That's what's happening here. We're exposing the darkness in this country and the corruption, and they're scared. That's why they're pulling all these emergency measures, because they're doing what dictators do. They're holding on to power.
And so for the truck driver or other people who wants to come here, what they can find on here on the place? Well, I can see quiet behind me, but what else it's available?
We got music, we got dancing, we're bringing in the stage, we got toilets, we got food, we have a kitchen set up, we have tents to keep warm, there's a first aid station over there. All your needs are met here. Yeah.
And can you explain a little bit your story? Where you're from? Where did you start this Freedom Convoy? And as well, what happened with you at the end of the 3 weeks that happened in Ireland here?
I've been on the front lines of this since 2020, and I've been trying to hold a voice for it. When the Freedom Convoy happened, I was on my way home to British Columbia. I looked at my business partner. I said, "We're going to Ottawa. We're going to follow the convoy."
Oh, cool.
And so we came with the convoy. We've been here since day one. It's like being at a family reunion, with a bunch of people that you've never met. It's just been nothing but unbelievable love and joy, and we're helping to heal a nation. It's been absolutely amazing.
So did your truck that didn't take you away? Did some things of you that was taken away from you? Did your bank account was frozen? What happened?
No, I followed all the law. I didn't actually get in with any of the blockades or anything like that. So I just, we stayed in a hotel and we didn't park our truck, in the blockade. We just tried to follow the rules the best we could. That's kind of one of the main reasons why, they were trying to move the blockade, right? So, yeah. People actually don't want their faces seen because they're scared by getting attacked.
Yeah.
You can see them there. This is where we're serving food and whatnot in this tent here. We have another tent that we're getting set up because our crowd's growing larger. So then we got fire stuff set up over here. We have different shacks. There's actually a medic shack over there, tent. So
for the fuel and the gas and
the local community has bound together. There's hundreds and hundreds of families that come and offer us places to stay. Everyone's staying here. They're offering us food. There's people in the community bringing us fresh food for the day, water. This community is unbelievable. Actually, it's pretty heartfelt. So.
And how long do you plan to maybe stay around here?
As long as it takes. We've all committed for the long run here. We're not leaving until all of our countrymen are free coast to coast. Yeah.
And I know that you share a lot with the people here. What is the worst story that you heard so far from them?
The worst story I've heard? Oh man. I seen the woman get trampled by the horse. I was right there when she got trampled. I was on the front lines the entire time. I've seen people get beat down, pepper sprayed, you name it. It's all a bad story.
Oh my God.
And so as you can see, the people here are just here to rest, to gather together, to share the story, to be together. Nothing is illegal right now. It's our own private residence, propriety. They are just staying here, doing some fire as a camping camp. So I hope you enjoy and you like what I'm just showing you here in Ottawa. It was Alexa for Venus. And if they clear Ottawa, the convoy is continuing. We are currently where is one of the sites where they are all gathering now. And if you want, we continue to bring you the other side of the story about the Freedom Convoy. Please go to convoyreports.com. On this website, you can sign the petition, and as well, you can help us with our journalism. Please donate generously. Thank you.
It's fucking time. It's fucking 1 hour, like. Oh, yes! Yeah!
Deep in the heart of Montreal. Old tunnels being used for trains from the past are being restored. And a modern line is being built. A change of fortune for Canada's economic competitiveness. But the return to the subway scene of Montreal is more than just the system. It's also the way the system was built. So how did this have-not city traditionally plagued with financial issues and corruption achieve this? Well, the answer is innovation. No, not what you'd normally think of. Management and financing innovation. During the financial crisis, the second largest pension fund in Canada, the CDPQ or CASE, noticed something nerdy. While most of their investments had tanked with the rest of the market, their infrastructure investments had been rock solid. The pension fund was heavily invested in Vancouver's Airport Transit Line being built for the Winter Olympics. It was a public-private partnership, and their role was the rich relative with money helping out their often troubled Quebec brother SNC Lavalin, who were overseeing construction. The project went well. The public got their line, the pension fund started getting returns for Quebec's retirees, and most Vancouverites don't even know that it's operated by anyone different to the other SkyTrain lines. That was a big idea. We should do that again, said their staff. So they decided to pick up some more infrastructure investments. But they were not alone. A lot of other large institutional investors had well in infrastructure during the financial crisis too. And a limited number of investment spots in infrastructure was snapped up. I mean, most North Americans will agree we haven't been doing a great job of building infrastructure lately. There just weren't enough projects looking for a rich relative. Case picked up its money bags and headed home. But this is where something unusual happened, because its home was Quebec. A province with an appetite for political ventures and unorthodox structures. The largest city of the province was Montreal, a town with several engineering and construction firms that had mostly allowed its transit to run on the fumes of its former glory. While Montreal had struggled with corruption, economic stagnation, and population decline, its peers had gradually taken the transit lead. In a meeting with the government, they learned that there was an interest in getting some long-dreamed-of transit projects done finally. But they didn't just sit around with their bag of money waiting for some engineering firm to come knocking. They set up and staffed up an infrastructure division near the major construction and engineering players in downtown Montreal. A group of people that can manage a project, not just checks. With the support of the Quebec government, they asked the various municipal and government stakeholders in Montreal what transportation problems they were looking to solve. They found out there was an interest in connecting the South Shore and the airport, as well as reducing the amount of traffic on existing metro lines. They also figured out what opportunities they had. The proposed new Champlain Bridge being built, had light rail on the project, could that be used? There were all these highways where people wouldn't mind cheaper above-ground infrastructure being built, and there were rail corridors that were underutilized. They also found out how much the government was paying for the bus and train services that currently solve the same transportation problems. They then put all of that together and came up with a better solution for the government at a better price than they were currently paying. It's kind of like if someone came to your street and asked you and your neighbors, how much are you paying for internet? And then they went away, figured out what it would cost to set up fiber optic, and came back to your house and said, okay, we can give you twice the speed for half the price if you and your neighbors all agree. It's pretty much that simple. So it's not, it's going to take the better half of the decade to figure this all out, but that's just of it. So, as an example, in 2018, there was a heavy rail passenger line going to Dumont Timber, an average cost per passenger kilometer to the Transit Authority of 89 cents. It would run 9 trains in the morning and afternoon from open platforms through the Montreal Tunnel to downtown. By retrofitting the existing tunnel and building down highways, they managed to come back to the city with a deal for a 20-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week automated line. Instead of 9 departures during the rush hour, there are 40. People don't need to carefully plan their day downtown and make sure they get back to the station at a certain time before the last train leaves. They can just wait until bar close and head to an enclosed, now air-conditioned station. The train will show up in minutes. And what's best? Instead of costing the government 89 cents per kilometer to operate, plus construction and new equipment costs, it costs them 72 cents, all included. This looks great. I mean, the only people who are unhappy with the train guys who drink steam. In order to make the project happen, the case kept things on the down low as it negotiated with all the various parties. It needed expropriation laws in place to acquire land for stations, so those were passed in 2017. Believe it or not allowing companies building transit systems to acquire land is a common cause of project failure. A transportation tax was set up so that property developments within 1 kilometer of new stations would fund the existing regional transit authority, ARTM. The ARTM pays the 72 cents per passenger kilometer to the case. This kind of handed the long-term power over to the ARTM that comes with having the purse strings. They also had the task of giving feedback and integrating the REM into the existing transit systems. So what are the risks with this project? The project's $6.9 billion in funding comes from loans from the Quebec government, the federal government, and Hydro-Quebec. The case takes the largest stake and risk. For the average Montrealer and the city of Montreal, the project's cost doesn't really matter. It's kind of like being a renter in someone's house. I mean, it's interesting to know the house's value and price, but in the end, you just have to know that rent is 72 cents per kilometer. Your ticket on any transit is already highly subsidized, but less so on the REM. The cost, risk, and overruns are all mostly the case's problem, and a bit of the Quebec and federal government, because they're supposed to get paid back one day too. But for the city, we just have to pay that subsidy, as per usual. If ridership ends up being very low, the case are the biggest loser. They're motivated to make the system as good as possible and get as many riders on it as they can. There is no minimum payment. If no one rides for REM, the city pays absolutely nothing. Although it's probably the end of the world, so I doubt people will be worried about transit project $5 at that point. As ridership increases, the price per kilometer the ARTM has to pay decreases. So we won't be punished as a city for growing and increasing our population. In fact, this incentivizes densification and growth. And this is the thing which I think people, when discussing REM, always forget. If we as citizens ever feel ripped off, if it becomes an infamous, oh man, that thing, it sucks, we're stuck paying for it. The case is a pension fund created and regulated by the Quebec government. The law can be changed and the case can be forced to, say, sell off its assets to the city at a reasonable price. And if the city were to acquire it, even at a price twice that of construction, it would be a great deal. It was an incredibly efficient use of money on a system that will have a very low long-run operating cost. So go ahead and screw up, case. Really looking forward to getting our hands on that.
Yeah.
Of course, the case don't want that to happen. They want to export this model and do it in other markets, which is not going to happen if they're infamous for screwing over their hometown. This grand vision to make Montreal a hub, not just for building our own transit, but for building other people's transit, is pretty wild. The case had a reputation for being a boring institutional investor, and when they started doing this, it's turned. There is something very Quebec about a state-owned enterprise with oddly huge ambitions to change society and the world. Bringing the conception stage vision and money and management could make this pension fund, of all things, one of the most, if not the most formidable transit builders on the continent. The deal sounded good to all parties involved, and the final version was signed in 2018, with the proposal accepted between the big names of government and industry. Millions of citizens finally got a chance to see what had been decided on for them, and there were quite a few questions. One group with a lot of them were the millions of Quebec pensioners. Was this a good way to invest Grandma's retirement money?
Is it?
We intend to go further. We intend to export this law. Quebec is not alone in the world in needing to build new critical public infrastructure. Governments in the rest of Canada, in the United States, in Europe, all face the same needs and the same fiscal constraints. This law can and will help to meet their needs.
The political parties you basically bundle a set of values into a political brand. Party whips operate like quality control. They keep the team elected in line with this brand. When they don't stay in line, they get ejected. The downside is that it does kind of turn politics into a team sport. But as long as you have a few teams to choose from, it works pretty well. You can probably find a team you like and only have to keep track of the different teams rather than every single player in the league. So what is the disadvantage of having an electoral system that pretends people vote for candidates when the research conclusively shows that people usually vote for parties? In order to find out, let's hit the source.
And the ticket. Oh, Calgary Center, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I want to ask my good friend over there, well, some of the statistics he's quoted here coming from the House, best debt to GDP ratio that he's not sure he's got some better numbers than that, because that's clearly not the case. When you look at this poll, and you look at the nature of what he's talking about here, conservatives, he said, need to pick a lane. Which lane are we as far as overspending? I don't know.
In today's video, I'm discussing one very predictable thing that covert narcissist always does. Let's get started. Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tammy Ann Joyce. I'm a practical life coach specializing in codependency and narcissistic abuse recovery for empaths, scapegoats, and awakening right leaders. If you're new to my channel, a very special welcome. Please take a second to say hello and introduce yourself in the comment section below. And if you're back, welcome back. Thanks for showing up and for tuning in. I'm going to be sure to subscribe and hello.
Learn about health data at infoa.ca/digital health learning.
Things are out of control. Justin Trudeau has invoked the Emergencies Act for the first time ever. And now you can too.
Hello, Mr. Jones. This is the CRA. It seems you haven't filed your taxes for the last 2 years.
I invoked the Emergencies Act. I invoked the Emergencies Act.
Sir, you can't do
Oh.
Thanks, Justin Trudeau. Overwhelmed, stressed, incapable of handling the situation, invoke the Emergencies Act.
I'm sorry, Gary. You just haven't landed any new accounts, so I'm gonna have to let you go.
I invoke the Emergencies Act. You can't fire me.
Yes, I can.
I can. It's a thing. Look it up. Sorry.
Gary?
These special temporary measures help you cope with any urgent and critical situation long after you should have.
Gary, I'm leaving.
I invoke the Emergencies Act.
That's somebody new.
I invoke the Emergencies Act.
Damn you, Gary.
We have to face this. I invoke the Emergencies Act.
The Emergencies Act. It's for emergencies. If you fail to act, Emergency Act. Available in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba.
Taking you live now after that NATO meeting. This is Jens Stoltenberg letting us know what the leaders decided.
I invited NATO's close partners, Finland, Sweden, and the European Union to our summit because this crisis affects us all. Russia has shattered peace in Europe.
You've been told your whole life that it's the next logical and natural step after high school. And you've also been told that it is prohibitively expensive. College is one of the biggest investments of your lifetime, so it deserves your careful consideration and strategy. What you decide now will have a tremendous impact on your future. So think about it, or you can just have your best interest in mind. Hi, I'm Tom. Here at Horton Student Loans, we'll help you with the funding you need for your college's largely arbitrary price tag without worrying you with interest or credit ratings, so you can focus on the important things, like making sure you don't have any classes before 11 a.m. and that your dorm room is decorated in a way that will impress your high school self and embarrass your future real self. You'll hate to be quiet, dudes. It's tasteful. You don't know anything about anything. Fair. One of the classes you could and should take will be economics, which will surely teach you in intricate detail about how you've been screwed. Lots of stuff about inflation-adjusted pay increases, but it will only make sense in the abstract sense because we've carefully designed the modern college experience to insulate you from real financial responsibility as much as possible. Everything about college is designed to trick you into thinking you're an adult when really it's closer to adult training wheels, or to put it more bluntly, to keep children safe. Your one student loan, which you won't have to start paying or even look at until you graduate, covers your housing and most of your groceries, so you won't need to learn how to budget for these fundamental human necessities until you graduate, can't get a job, and your parents start charging you for both.
No, when I leave college, I'll have a high-paying job. I mean, that's what you're paying for. Because you're buying a degree that makes you qualified for a good job.
Well, that's what I've certainly convinced you is true. In reality, the national student loan debt is at $1.2 trillion, which translates to a whole lot of fancy graduates who don't have jobs that can actually back the loans we forced them to take out.
It's possible. I mean, both of my parents went to college and they're not indebted.
Don't bother asking them for advice. When they were in college, they could pay for it with a summer job. That would only be possible today if your summer job was being Elon Musk. The new reality is that it's almost impossible to let student debt disappear, even if you go bankrupt. I still don't know how I managed to pull that one off.
Are there loan companies that are better that I can choose from?
No. The government decides what companies you borrow it from, and then your debt can actually be sold multiple times to different organizations beyond your control, and they can do whatever they want with your debt.
Hey, I just bought your debt. And I'm gifting you the opportunity to put off paying for 6 whole months. As a side effect, we've been paying for literally 50 years, but hey, time is money, right? I wouldn't know. I didn't put it on. It seemed expensive. My dad gave me this job.
Of course, it's not like this money's wasted. It goes right into the school's endowment, which is used to pay for things like tuition assistance and fellowships, but mostly to play the scale. In 2014, Yale's $26 billion endowment made almost $500 million in hedge funds and put just under $200 million of that towards its actual students. So your tuition dollars are making America